The snow was falling harder now, and David could barely see through his windshield even with the wipers going full speed. He should have been home an hour ago. His daughter Lily was probably already asleep and he'd missed tucking her in again. The thought made his chest tight with guilt. Being a CEO meant long hours, endless meetings, and tonight a Christmas Eve charity gala that ran way too late. But being a single dad meant something else entirely. It meant Lily falling asleep waiting for him more nights than he cared to admit. It meant his mother having to pick up the slack because he was always working, always busy, always somewhere else. He loosened his bow tie and turned down the radio. The streets were nearly empty now, just past midnight on Christmas Eve. Most people were home with their families, probably sleeping peacefully with stockings hung and presents under the tree. David had wrapped Lily's gifts before leaving for the gala, but it wasn't the same as being there. The GPS showed heavy traffic on the main route home, so David took a turn down a side street he rarely used. It cut through the back end of the shopping district, where all the fancy stores had closed hours ago. The alley was narrow, lined with dumpsters and loading docks, the kind of place that looked completely different in daylight. That's when his headlights caught something that made him hit the brakes. At first, he thought it was just trash bags piled against the side of a dumpster, but then he saw it move. Just slightly, but enough to know it was alive. His heart started pounding as he put the car in park and left the engine running, headlights still pointing at the spot. He got out slowly, the cold air hitting him like a wall. Snow crunched under his expensive dress shoes as he walked closer. And then he saw her, a little girl, maybe 5 or 6 years old. She was curled up on flattened cardboard boxes, pressed against the brick wall like she was trying to disappear into it. A dirty blanket that looked like it came from a thrift store covered most of her small body. Her dark hair was tangled and matted, and even from a few feet away, David could see her shivering. For a moment, he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His mind was racing through 1,000 thoughts at once. This couldn't be real. Not on Christmas Eve. Not in this city. Not a child sleeping in the trash like she was nothing. He knelt down slowly, not wanting to scare her. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, sweetheart. Are you okay?" The girl's eyes flew open, and the look in them broke something inside David. Pure terror. She scrambled backward, pressing herself harder against the wall, pulling the blanket up to her chin. Her whole body was shaking, and he didn't know if it was from cold or fear or both. "It's okay," David said, holding up his hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." "I promise." She didn't say anything, just stared at him with those huge, frightened eyes. She couldn't have weighed more than 40 pounds soaking wet. Her cheeks were hollow, smudged with dirt, and her lips had a slight blue tinge from the cold. David's mind was spinning. Where were her parents? How long had she been out here? He looked around the alley, half expecting someone to appear, but they were completely alone. Just him, this terrified little girl, and the falling snow. "Do you speak English?" he asked gently. The girl nodded slightly, but still didn't speak. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Are you cold?" This time she nodded, and David saw tears starting to well up in her eyes. He wanted to scoop her up and carry her to the car immediately, but he knew he had to be careful. She was clearly terrified, and the last thing he wanted was to make it worse. He pulled out his phone and showed her his lock screen. It was a photo of Lily from her last birthday, wearing a huge smile and a sparkly princess crown. "This is my daughter," he said. "Her name is Lily. She's 7 years old. She's at home sleeping right now, dreaming about Christmas morning." The girl looked at the photo, and something shifted in her expression. Just a little bit. Maybe seeing another child made him seem less scary. "I have a daughter," David continued, his voice soft. "I know what it's like to want to protect a little girl. I promise I only want to help you. You can't stay out here. It's too cold. You'll freeze." The girl's teeth were chattering now. She looked at him, then at the car with its headlights still on and the engine running. He could see the warmth practically calling to her. "No hurt?" she whispered. Her voice was tiny, with an accent he couldn't quite place. "No hurt," David promised. "Never." Slowly, she reached out one small hand from under the blanket. David's heart clenched when he saw the bruises on her arm, dark purple and yellow marks that looked like fingerprints. Someone had grabbed her, hard. He wanted to ask about the bruises, but he knew now wasn't the time. Instead, he carefully took off his tuxedo jacket and held it out to her. It was probably worth more than most people made in a month, but right now it was just a warm piece of fabric for a freezing child. "Here," he said. Put this on. It's warm. She took it hesitantly and wrapped it around her shoulders. It swallowed her tiny frame completely. Then, moving slowly, David held out his hand. Let me help you to the car. We'll turn the heat on. I have food too. Are you hungry? At the mention of food, her eyes went wide. She nodded quickly and David's stomach turned. When was the last time this child had eaten? She let him help her stand. And he noticed she was wearing shoes that were at least 2 sizes too big, probably found in the trash. Her clothes were layered, mismatched things that looked like they'd been donated somewhere and never quite fit. A small backpack was clutched against her chest, and she wouldn't let go of it even as David gently guided her toward the car. He opened the back door and helped her climb in, then cranked the heat up as high as it would go. The girl sat in the middle seat, still holding that backpack like her life depended on it. His jacket wrapped around her shoulders. David reached into the front seat and grabbed the takeout container from the gala. He'd been planning to eat it for lunch tomorrow, but that didn't matter now. Inside was chicken, pasta, rolls, and a piece of chocolate cake. He handed it to her along with a bottle of water. Eat, he said. It's yours. The girl looked at the food like she couldn't believe it was real. Then she started eating, not like a child eating dinner, like someone who hadn't seen food in days. She didn't use the fork, just grabbed the chicken with her hands and tore into it. Crumbs fell everywhere, but David didn't care. He just watched, feeling sick to his stomach. How long had she been out there? Days, weeks? And more importantly, where did she come from? While she ate, David pulled out his phone and dialed the non-emergency police line. He explained the situation as calmly as he could, gave them his location, and was told an officer would be there within 20 minutes. The girl finished the food in less than 5 minutes and was now drinking the water so fast David worried she'd make herself sick. When she finally stopped, she wiped her mouth with the back of her hand and looked at him. Thank you, she whispered. You're welcome, David said, his throat tight. What's your name, sweetheart? She hesitated, then said quietly, Sophia. Sophia, that's a beautiful name. I'm David. She nodded but didn't say anything else. Her hand went to her backpack and she pulled out something small. A photograph. It was old and bent, the edges worn from being handled too many times. She looked at it for a long moment, then held it against her chest. David tried to see what was in the photo, but from his angle in the front seat, he couldn't make it out. Whatever it was, it clearly meant everything to her. Sophia, he said gently, can you tell me about your family? Your mom or dad? Where are they? Her eyes filled with tears. Mama's gone, she said, her voice breaking. She's with the angels now. David felt like he'd been punched. I'm so sorry, honey. What about your dad? Or anyone else who takes care of you? Sophia shook her head quickly and fear flooded her face again. Can't go back, she said. They're bad. They hurt Sophia. Make Sophia go on streets, ask for money. If Sophia don't get enough, they... She touched her arm where the bruises were. David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Someone had been hurting this child, using her. The rage that flowed through him was unlike anything he'd felt before. He wanted to find whoever did this and make them pay, but right now Sophia needed him to stay calm. You're safe now, he told her. I promise you, Sophia, no one is going to hurt you again. The police are coming, and they're going to help us figure everything out. But you're not going back to those people. Not ever. She looked at him with those big eyes, and he saw something that nearly destroyed him. Hope. Like maybe, just maybe, she could believe him. Red and blue lights appeared at the end of the alley. The police had arrived. David got out and spoke with the 2 officers who approached, explaining everything he'd found. They were kind, professional, and clearly just as disturbed by the situation as he was. One of them, a female officer named Rodriguez, spoke some Spanish and tried to talk with Sophia in the back seat. That's when David realized the accent he'd heard was Spanish. Sophia answered the officer's questions in broken English mixed with Spanish, and David watched as Rodriguez's expression grew darker with every answer. After about 20 minutes, Rodriguez came back to talk with David. She's been living on the streets for at least 2 weeks, she said quietly. Maybe longer. Before that, she was with some people who were using her and other kids for a begging ring, possibly worse. She escaped, but she's been too scared to ask for help because they told her police would send her away. That's insane, David said. She's just a child. I know. We've been tracking cases like this. There's a trafficking ring operating in the area. This might be our first real break." Rodriguez looked back at the car where Sophia was visible through the window, still clutching that photograph. Child Protective Services is overwhelmed tonight because of the holiday. Their emergency placement homes are full. She'd have to go to a temporary facility. David looked at Sophia. She was watching them through the window, fear written all over her face. She probably thought they were deciding to send her away. "What if she stayed with me?" David heard himself say. "Just for tonight. It's Christmas. She shouldn't spend it in some facility scared and alone." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. "That's not standard procedure, I know. But I have a daughter her age. My home is safe. You can run my background check right now. I'm cleared for security at the highest levels because of my work. I can't let her spend Christmas in some cold building with strangers." The officer studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Let me make some calls." An hour later, after background checks and paperwork and more questions than David thought possible, it was arranged. Sophia would stay with him for the next 72 hours while they worked on a more permanent solution. She'd need to see a doctor first thing in the morning, and a social worker would check on them daily. David drove home slowly, Sophia asleep in the back seat, finally warm and full and safe. When he pulled into his driveway, his mother was waiting by the door, having gotten his text explaining what had happened. She took one look at Sophia, and tears filled her eyes. Together they carried the sleeping child inside, and David's mother prepared the guest room while he gently cleaned Sophia's face and hands with a warm washcloth. The little girl barely stirred. She was exhausted beyond measure. When he finally tucked her into the bed, she opened her eyes just slightly. "Safe," she whispered. "Safe," David promised. "You're home now." She fell back asleep holding that mysterious photograph, and David stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe. He'd left for a charity gala tonight thinking he was going to help people by writing a check. Instead, he'd found this child sleeping in the trash on the coldest night of the year. He didn't know it yet, but finding Sophia was going to change everything. His life, her life, his daughter's life, everything. But right now, on this Christmas morning, all that mattered was that she was safe, that she was warm, that she wasn't alone anymore. Tomorrow would bring answers. Tonight was for healing. The morning sun streaming through the kitchen windows felt almost too bright. David sat at the counter, his third cup of coffee going cold in his hands, while he watched his mother make pancakes. Upstairs, Sophia was still sleeping. She'd barely moved all night, her small body finally getting the rest it desperately needed. Lily had woken up an hour ago, bursting with Christmas morning excitement, but stopped dead in her tracks when David explained they had a guest. A little girl who needed their help. A little girl who'd been through something terrible and needed kindness more than anything else in the world. His daughter had listened with wide eyes, her Christmas presents temporarily forgotten. "Can I meet her?" Lily had asked quietly. "When she wakes up," David had promised. "But we need to be gentle, okay? She's been very scared." Now Lily sat at the table coloring a welcome card for Sophia, her tongue sticking out slightly in concentration. She'd insisted on making it herself, with hearts and flowers and the words "You're safe here" written in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. David's phone buzzed. "Detective Rodriguez," he answered quickly. "How's she doing?" The detective asked without preamble, still sleeping. "I'm going to take her to the emergency room as soon as she wakes up, like we discussed." "Good. I've been digging into some things overnight. David, this is bigger than we thought. We've had reports of at least 3 other children matching similar descriptions over the past 6 months, all involved in forced begging operations, all too scared to talk." David's grip tightened on the phone. "Someone's running an organized operation. That's what it looks like. If Sophia can tell us more about where she was staying, who was controlling her, we might be able to help those other kids too." Rodriguez paused. "I know she's traumatized. I'm not going to push her, but anything she remembers could save other children. I understand." After hanging up, David looked at his mother. She'd raised him alone after his father left, working 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. She knew what it meant to struggle, to fight for every single thing, and she taught him that people who had more had a responsibility to help people who had less. "You did the right thing bringing her home," she said, flipping a pancake. "Whatever happens next, you did the right thing." A soft sound from the doorway made them all turn. Sophia stood there drowning in one of Lily's old nightgowns that David's mother had found for her. Her dark hair was still tangled, her face pale, and she looked terrified. Like maybe the safety of last night had been a dream and she'd woken up back in the nightmare. "Hey, Sophia," David said gently, getting up slowly so he wouldn't startle her. "Good morning. You're safe, remember? You're at my house. This is my mom, and you remember Lily from the picture I showed you?" Lily jumped up, holding out her card. "I made this for you," she said, then caught herself and lowered her voice. Hi, I'm glad you're here." Sophia looked at the card, then at Lily, and something incredible happened. The smallest smile touched her lips. Just for a second, but it was there. "Thank you," she whispered. David's mother put a plate of pancakes on the table. "Come sit, sweetheart. You must be hungry." Sophia moved forward hesitantly, like she expected the floor to disappear under her feet at any moment. She sat at the very edge of the chair, that same backpack from last night clutched in her lap. She still hadn't let it go. Breakfast was quiet. Sophia ate slowly this time, not with the desperate hunger from last night, but with the careful movements of someone who wasn't sure if the food would be taken away. Lily kept sneaking glances at her, clearly wanting to talk but holding back because David had told her to give Sophia space. After breakfast, David explained they needed to go to the hospital. Sophia's eyes went wide with fear. "It's okay," he assured her. "It's just to make sure you're not sick. The doctors are nice. They just want to help, and I'll be right there with you the whole time." The emergency room visit was harder than David had expected. Sophia clung to him while the doctors examined her, and what they found made him want to punch a wall. She was severely malnourished, dehydrated, and had multiple bruises in various stages of healing. The doctor quietly told David that the bruises were consistent with physical abuse, and they'd have to file a report with Child Protective Services. "We already have an open case," David explained. "Detective Rodriguez is handling it." The doctor nodded. "She's going to need follow-up care. Therapy too, probably. This kind of trauma doesn't just go away." While Sophia was getting x-rays to check for any broken bones, David stepped into the hallway and called his assistant. "I need you to clear my schedule for the next week," he said. "But you have the board meeting on Tuesday and the investor presentation on not cancel it." All of it, something important came up. There was a pause. His assistant had worked for him for 5 years and knew better than to argue when he used that tone. "Consider it done." Back at the house that evening, with Sophia given a clean bill of health aside from the malnutrition and bruising, David sat in his home office while the girls played in the living room. He could hear Lily showing Sophia her toys, chattering away about each one while Sophia made small sounds of acknowledgement. He pulled out the business card Detective Rodriguez had given him and found himself thinking about that photograph Sophia carried everywhere. She'd shown it to them earlier, after Lily had shared her favorite stuffed animal and Sophia had wanted to share something in return. The photo showed a young woman holding a baby. The woman was smiling, standing in front of what looked like a restaurant. The sign behind her was partially visible. La Espere. Something. The photo was old, creased from being folded and unfolded countless times. David had taken a picture of it with his phone, being careful to ask Sophia's permission first. Now he stared at the image, something nagging at the back of his mind. Something familiar. He opened his laptop and ran the image through a reverse image search. Nothing came up. He tried cropping it to just show the restaurant sign and searched again. Still nothing. Then he noticed the writing on the back. Sophia had shown them that too. It was in Spanish. "Para mi pequeño tesoro siempre juntas, mamá 2019. He put it into a translator. "For my little treasure always together, Mama 2019. David felt his throat tighten. That little girl out there playing with his daughter had lost her mother, had been alone in the world, had been hurt and used and discarded like she didn't matter. He made a decision. He called his head of security, a former detective who still had connections throughout the city. "Jack, I need help finding information about a place. It's a restaurant, possibly in Queens based on the architecture in this photo. The name starts with La Espere something. It might not be in business anymore. Send me the photo. I'll see what I can find." 20 minutes later, Jack called back. "Found it. La Esperanza Restaurant. It was in Queens near Junction Boulevard. Closed down about 3 years ago. The owner retired. Can you find the owner? I need to talk to them. I'll make some calls." That night, after both girls were in bed, Lily in her room and Sophia in the guest room with a nightlight David had bought on the way home from the hospital. He sat with his mother in the living room. "She's been asking about her backpack every few minutes," his mother said quietly, "like she's afraid someone will take it. There's hardly anything in it. Just that photograph, a broken hair clip, and a small stuffed bunny that's seen better days. It's probably all she has left of her life before," David said. "Her whole world fits in a backpack. What are you going to do when the 72 hours are up?" David had been thinking about that all day. "I don't know. The social worker said they're going to try to find family members. But if Sophia was being trafficked, whoever took her probably claimed to be family. And her mother is gone. She might end up in foster care." His mother looked at him with knowing eyes. "You're already attached to her." "How could I not be? Mom, she was sleeping in the trash. Someone threw her away like she was nothing. And she's so small, so scared, but she's also brave. Did you see how she smiled at Lily's card this morning? She's still in there, that little girl who should be playing and laughing and being a kid. She needs time and love. Lots of it." The next morning, David got a call from Jack. "I found the owner of La Esperanza. Her name is Rosa Martinez. She's 82 years old, living in a retirement home in Astoria. I told her someone wanted to ask about the restaurant, and she said she'd be happy to talk. I can text you the address." David looked at Sophia, who was sitting on the floor with Lily, building a tower out of blocks. She looked so different from the terrified child he'd found in the alley. She was wearing Lily's clothes, her hair was brushed and clean, and there was color in her cheeks. But the fear was still there, just under the surface. She still flinched at loud noises, still hoarded extra food from meals in her pockets, still woke up crying in the middle of the night. "Send it," David said. He asked his mother to watch the girls and drove to Astoria. Rosa Martinez was waiting in the common room of her retirement home, a tiny woman with sharp eyes and hands that trembled slightly with age. "You wanted to ask about my restaurant?" she said in accented English after David introduced himself. He pulled out his phone and showed her the photograph. "Do you recognize this woman?" Rosa took the phone, squinting at the screen. Her eyes went wide. "Isabella," she breathed. "Isabella Morales. She worked for me for almost 2 years. Such a sweet girl. She was trying so hard to build a life here." Rosa looked up at David. "Where did you get this photo?" "It's a long story. What can you tell me about Isabella?" Rosa handed back the phone. "She came to me in 2017, I think. Maybe 2018. She needed work and I needed kitchen help. She was undocumented, so I paid her cash. I know that's not legal, but she was desperate, and I've always believed we help people when we can." David nodded, not judging. "Was she alone?" "At first, yes. Then she got pregnant. She was so scared, but also so happy. The father, she said, was a good man, but he'd moved away for work. She never told him about the baby. I tried to convince her, but she said she didn't want to burden him. He was following his dreams, and she wanted him to fly free." David's heart was pounding. "Did she ever tell you about the father?" "Anything about him?" Rosa thought for a moment. "Not much. She said they met when he was working construction, trying to pay for school. She said he was kind, that he treated her like she mattered. She kept a photo of him somewhere, but I never saw it." "What happened to Isabella?" Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Car accident. About 2 years ago, maybe a little more. One day she just didn't come to work. Later I heard from someone that she'd been hit by a drunk driver, killed instantly. I tried to find out what happened to her baby, but I didn't know where to look. I assumed family had taken the child. Did she have family?" "She mentioned a cousin once. Eduardo something. She didn't like him much. Said he was involved in bad business. But when you have no one else?" Rosa shook her head sadly. "Eduardo." David's mind was racing. That must be who had Sophia, who had hurt her. "Do you still have any records from the restaurant? Old photos? Anything with Isabella in them?" Rosa smiled slightly. "I have boxes of photos at my daughter's house. She keeps telling me to throw them away, but I can't. Too many memories. I can ask her to look through them if you'd like. Please, it's important." 2 days later, Rosa's daughter called. She'd found a box of photos from the restaurant. She could drop them by David's office if he wanted. That afternoon, David sat at his desk with a folder full of old photographs. Staff parties, holiday celebrations, regular days at the restaurant. And there, in one photo from 2018, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A group of staff members, including Isabella, smiling at the camera. And in the background, barely visible, a younger man in work clothes carrying supplies. The photo was grainy, his face partially turned away, but David recognized the build, the posture. It was him. He'd worked at La Esperanza for exactly 3 months in 2018, picking up weekend shifts while he was finishing his business degree. He'd needed the money and they'd fed him for free, Isabella. He remembered her now. They'd dated briefly. She was beautiful, kind, always smiling despite working 2 jobs. They'd gone out maybe 5 or 6 times before he got the job offer in California. He'd moved across the country and they'd lost touch. He'd changed his number, created new email addresses as his career took off, and never looked back. She'd been pregnant with his child, and she'd never told him. David's hands were shaking as he pulled out his phone and called Detective Rodriguez. "I need a DNA test," he said. "As soon as possible." "What, why?" "Because I think Sophia might be my daughter." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for what felt like forever. Finally, Rodriguez spoke. "Are you certain?" "No, but I need to know. Her mother worked at a restaurant where I used to work." "The timeline matches up. David's voice broke. "I need to know." "I'll make the arrangements." That night, David couldn't sleep. He stood in the doorway of the guest room watching Sophia sleep. She looked peaceful now, the fear smoothed from her face in slumber. That photograph of her mother was tucked under her pillow, where she kept it every night. If she was his daughter, it meant he'd had a child out there for 6 years and never knew. It meant Isabella had died trying to protect their daughter alone. It meant Sophia had suffered through hell while he'd been building his empire, completely unaware. And if she wasn't his daughter? Then what? He'd already fallen in love with this brave little girl. Already thought of her as part of his family. Already couldn't imagine sending her away. "Daddy?" Lily's voice whispered from her room. "Are you okay?" He went to her, sat on the edge of her bed. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Is Sophia going to stay with us?" "I don't know yet. Would you want her to?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "She's like the sister I always wanted. She's scared a lot, but I think she's getting less scared. Today she laughed at my joke about the chicken crossing the road. It was just a little laugh, but it counted." David hugged his daughter. "You're a good person, Lily. I'm proud of you. If she has to leave, will we still get to see her?" "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure she's taken care of. I promise." But even as he said it, David knew the truth. He wasn't going to let Sophia go. Whether she was biologically his or not, she was already his daughter in every way that mattered. The DNA test was scheduled for the next morning, and after that, everything would change, one way or another. Nothing would ever be the same again. The DNA testing center was in a plain building downtown, the kind of place you'd walk past 100 times without noticing. David held Sophia's hand as they walked in, her small fingers gripping his tightly. She'd been quiet all morning, sensing that something important was happening even if she didn't understand what. "It's just a quick swab inside your cheek," the nurse explained gently, showing Sophia the cotton swab. "It doesn't hurt at all, see?" She demonstrated on herself. Sophia looked up at David, uncertain. He nodded encouragingly. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just like the nurse showed you." The actual test took less than 5 minutes. Sophia was brave, only flinching slightly when the nurse swabbed the inside of her cheek. David went next, and then it was done. The nurse labeled the samples carefully and explained that results would take 3 to 5 business days. 3 to 5 days of not knowing. 3 to 5 days of wondering if this little girl holding his hand was his daughter, or just a child he'd found in an alley who'd somehow become part of his heart. On the drive home, Sophia spoke up from the back seat. "Why we do that?" David glanced at her in the rearview mirror. He'd been dreading this question. How do you explain DNA testing to a 6-year-old? How do you tell her that you might be her father without getting her hopes up? "It's a special test that shows if people are family," he said carefully. "Like how you know Lily is my daughter because she's family. This test can tell us if people are connected." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "You think maybe we're family?" "Maybe. I knew your mama a long time ago." "Before you were born? You knew mama?" Sophia's voice went high with surprise and something that sounded like hope. "I did. She was very kind. Very beautiful. I didn't know she had a baby, though. I moved away before that happened." Sophia pulled out the photograph from her pocket. She carried it everywhere now, even though David had offered to put it in a frame to keep it safe. Mama said my papa was a good man. She said he was smart and worked very hard. She said maybe someday I would meet him. David had to pull over. His eyes were burning with tears and he couldn't see the road properly. He put the car in park and turned around to look at Sophia. Your mama was right about one thing, he said, his voice thick. If I am your papa, then I would consider myself the luckiest man in the world. And if I'm not, then I still feel lucky because I got to meet you. Sophia smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. I like being here, she said softly. With you and Lily and Grandma, I feel safe. You are safe, David promised. No matter what that test says, you're safe with us. But even as he said it, he knew the reality was more complicated. If he wasn't her biological father, Child Protective Services would move her to a foster home once the emergency placement period ended. He could fight for custody, but without a biological connection, it would be an uphill battle. The system didn't just hand children over to wealthy strangers who wanted to help, no matter how good their intentions were. When they got home, Detective Rodriguez was waiting on the front steps. She stood when she saw them, her expression serious. We need to talk, she said to David. I have news about the case. David's mother took Sophia inside, promising hot chocolate and cookies. Once they were alone, Rodriguez pulled out a tablet and showed David a series of photographs. We found him, she said. Eduardo Vega, Sophia's cousin, or at least that's what he claimed to be when he took custody of her after Isabella died. He's been running a child trafficking operation out of 3 different apartments in Queens. We arrested him this morning along with 2 accomplices. David felt his stomach turn. How many children? We found 4 others, ages 5 to 9. All of them were being forced to beg on street corners and in subway stations. The ones who didn't bring back enough money. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The bruises, David said flatly, among other things. These kids were living in terrible conditions. Barely fed, sleeping on the floor, no medical care. One of them has pneumonia. Rodriguez's jaw was tight. Eduardo had been doing this for at least 3 years. Using kids from families with no papers. Families who were too scared to go to authorities. Isabella's death gave him the perfect opportunity with Sophia. How did he even get custody? Isabella had listed him as emergency contact at Sophia's daycare. After the accident, he showed up claiming to be family, and with no one else coming forward, the daycare released her to him. There was no formal custody arrangement because Isabella wasn't documented. Everything was off the books. David ran his hands through his hair, so he just took her and put her to work. According to the other children, yes. Sophia was one of the newer ones, only with him for about 18 months. The others have been there longer. Rodriguez paused. You finding Sophia is what broke this case open. Those other 4 kids are safe now because you stopped that night. It should have felt good knowing he'd helped save other children. But all David could think about was Sophia living that nightmare for 18 months. 18 months of being hurt and scared and alone. 18 months of sleeping on floors and being sent out to beg from strangers. 18 months of thinking this was just how life was going to be forever. What happens to the other kids? He asked. We're working on it. 2 of them have family we're trying to locate in other states. The other 2 will likely go into foster care. It's not ideal, but it's better than where they were. After Rodriguez left, David sat on his front steps for a long time. Inside, he could hear Lily and Sophia laughing about something. His mother was singing in the kitchen, probably making dinner. Normal domestic sounds, the kind of sounds Sophia had been missing her entire life. His phone rang. Jack, his head of security. I did some more digging on Isabella Morales, Jack said. Found some records from the hospital where Sophia was born. The birth certificate lists father as unknown, but there were some medical records that mentioned Isabella came in for prenatal care starting in early 2019. Based on the dates, conception would have been around May or June 2018. David closed his eyes. May 2018. That's exactly when he and Isabella had been seeing each other, right before he left for California in July. There's something else, Jack continued. I found Isabella's obituary. It mentioned she worked at La Esperanza and was survived by her daughter Sophia, age 3 at the time. But it also said friends could make donations to Sophia's education fund at a specific bank account. Did anyone donate? The account was closed 6 months after Isabella's death. Empty. I'm guessing Eduardo cleaned it out when he took Sophia. Of course he did. David felt sick. Every piece of information just made this worse. Isabella had tried to plan for Sophia's future even after death, and Eduardo had stolen that too. That evening, David sat both girls down after dinner. He decided they deserved to know what was happening, at least the parts they could understand. "Sophia, I want to tell you something," he started. "The police found the people who hurt you. They're not going to hurt anyone anymore. They're going to jail for a very long time." Sophia's eyes went wide. "The bad people? They can't come get me?" "They can't come get you. They can't hurt you ever again. You're safe, and so are the other kids who were with them." "Other kids?" Sophia whispered. "Is Miguel okay? And the little girl, Anna? They're all okay now. They're safe, just like you." Sophia started crying, not sad tears but relief tears. She threw her arms around David's neck and sobbed into his shoulder. Lily came over and hugged her too, and David held both girls while Sophia cried out months of fear and pain. When she finally calmed down, she looked up at David with red, puffy eyes. "I was so scared," she said. "Every day I was scared. I wanted Mama, but she was gone. I wanted to run away, but I didn't know where to go. And then you found me. I'm so glad I found you," David said, his own voice breaking. "So glad. Are you really my papa?" Sophia asked suddenly. "For real? We're waiting for the test to tell us for sure." "But Sophia, whether that test says yes or no, I want you to know something. Being a papa isn't just about blood. It's about love. It's about showing up. It's about keeping you safe and making sure you know you matter. And I already feel all of those things for you." Lily nodded seriously. "And if you're my sister, that's like the best Christmas present ever. Even better than the bike I got." Sophia managed a small laugh through her tears. The next 3 days felt like the longest of David's life. He tried to work from home, taking conference calls while keeping an eye on the girls playing together. Sophia was opening up more each day. She laughed easier. She didn't flinch as much at sudden movements. She'd started calling his mother Grandma without being prompted. But she still had nightmares. Still woke up crying for her mother. Still hoarded food in her pockets, unable to trust that there would always be more. The trauma wasn't something that would disappear in a few days or even a few months. It would take time, therapy, patience, and love. On the 4th day, David's phone rang. "The testing center. Mr. Thompson, your results are ready. You can access them through our secure portal, or we can discuss them over the phone." David's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might burst out of his chest. "Tell me now, please." There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "Based on the samples provided, the probability of paternity is 99.99%. You are the biological father." The world seemed to stop spinning. David couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what he'd just heard. "Mr. Thompson, are you there?" "Yes," he managed. "Yes, I'm here." "You're sure?" "The results are conclusive. Would you like us to send the official documentation?" "Yes, send everything." After he hung up, David just sat there in his home office, staring at nothing. Sophia was his daughter. His actual biological daughter. He'd had a child for 6 years and never knew it. While he was building his company, making his fortune, living his life, his daughter was out there, first with her mother, then with monsters who hurt her, and finally alone on the streets. The guilt was overwhelming. If he'd stayed in touch with Isabella, if he'd given her a way to reach him, if he'd just checked in just once, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe Isabella would have told him about Sophia. Maybe he could have helped them. Maybe Isabella would still be alive, but he couldn't change the past. He could only move forward.